Yeah, really excited to start playing football again in preparation for an opponent. We worked hard in our bye week. That is my philosophy. Plenty of work to do and plenty of momentum to gain. And certainly there's an argument for rest and rejuvenation, which I think we balanced appropriately, but we're gaining momentum and improving because of the volume of work we're putting in. And so with a game not scheduled, that wasn't motive or reason for us to then slow down. So we accelerated. I think we've improved again. Hard to say because there wasn't a Saturday game to demonstrate that, but I feel really good of what we accomplished in the bye week, and looking forward to our next just our next test. We had a great chance to bond, I guess is the right word, as a team. My house is relatively done now, and so the team was able to come out, and even though it was pouring rain, we had a nice kind of bye week closure after practice on Saturday, and culminating event of the bye week. Rather than play a football game, we had a chance to just become closer as a team, and that set the framework and the stage for us moving forward for the rest of the season. So I'll take questions based on any of that.
When there's not a football game on Saturday, how do you gauge the quality of a week of practice?
Most of it is by the intent of practice, and so there's a lot that can be said and shown through body language, and there's a lot that can be said and shown through competitive spirit, and there's a lot that can be said and shown from what practice not only looks like but what it feels like. And I love the idea of, as a head coach, of trying to hold the team back. And after as hard as we worked during the bye week, they were eager to practice Saturday morning. They were eager to run into each other. They were eager to compete, and they're passionate about improving. And so even though we worked hard the whole week, I found myself having to step back or stop things a little bit short because of how it was escalating. And so I gauged it based on that. We didn't put them in as many situations against each other later in the week. I'm talking about our offense versus our defense. We did that early in the week. But we moved into more victory teamwork against Pitt later in the week, and the team couldn't get enough of that work and the questions and what do they do here, and so without a test to show and demonstrate the execution, it was more by chemistry and demeanor is the best answer I could give you.
Bronco, how does the timing of the bye week in the season and the timing of where you are in this program play into the way you handled that this week?
And that's, I would love to say I know for sure. I think we'll know after the fact. Any bye week, I think there's arguments either way. Anytime you have one, of what the pluses are in terms of momentum, what the negatives are in terms of possibly losing momentum, health of your team. I really believe we're improving because of the consistency of the tests and knowing there's another one coming. And so without that, I wasn't quite sure if the program was mature enough and how they would approach the practice. But we did a nice job from the minute we finished celebrating in Duke's locker room. I framed this will be a difficult week. And our team does well if they understand the why. And the why was, in my opinion, is we're gaining momentum and improving as a program because of the work, because of the volume, and because of the urgency. And so planting those seeds right then, I think, helped them understand the framework we were going in. I chose to frame it that way because I think that's what has been helping us improve. And if it was a different team, a different stage, a different era, maybe differently than that, but this plan was specific to this team during this week of the season.
Jackson talked to us last week and specifically talked about how he was going to use the bye week, a little part of it, to kind of gauge that line of aggression and going over it. Have you addressed that all with the team, and how have you gauged from game one? We didn't have any penalties to game 5. Where you had some, where they are and kind of flirting with that line.
It's a really good question. I've actually struggled to find the right way and the right timing, the most effective way to present that, just in relation to the exact scenario that you said. And the best way that I framed it now is any of those things that are after the play or late, those are the ones that are, to me, are not acceptable at this point. Effort penalties within a play, I'm still willing to reserve head coach's judgment if I think that's still smart, and there will be plenty that will argue against that. But the ones that are happening after the play or late, we are very clear, and what I presented to the team today is that there's a clear statistical mark. If you have a 15-yard penalty against the defense, what the offense's chances to score are when you have a 15-yard penalty, and vice versa, and I shared that with them today. And so, again, this team does well when they understand the why, and so that's the best way that I can frame it to them is I love the aggression and the improvement in that area. Now let's talk about where those boundaries are, and the cleanest way I can say right now is any of those things after the play or before the play, because those are really concentration or selfish issues. During the play, occasionally there's going to be an aggressive thing that I'm not going to curtail at this point, because the program still needs to have confident, aggressive football players that I'd rather hold back than encourage. And so I'm working that balance the best I can.
Bronco, after the UConn game, Robert came in and told us that one of the things holding back the offense was the deep passing game and intermediate routes, and he vowed to fix it. You guys are now 5th in the league in passing. What did he do specifically to turn things around?
There was just a really focused and clear intent to find out what players on our team can play what roles and who is best in the intermediate to long range. And once we've identified them, where can they do it from? And so we identified the personnel that was best, the formations then that put the right complement of those guys on the field at the same time, or to highlight whoever was best, and then design plays specifically to target that individual. So it was really intentional on Coach and I's part and our offensive staff. Rather than just running plays that are intermediate to long, it's okay, now with whom and where do we put that player to give him his best chance and our best chance. So we're literally personnelling every play, meaning, so here's the formation, and then we're calling out names as we send them out there of where they're aligning to give that play within that scheme its best chance to fulfill maybe medium, long, etc. And so that's how we've done it. That's how he's done it.
You've talked about simplifying things for the defense. Will there come a point this season with this group, you think, where you can start adding back on,
sure.
Or is that for another
No,
year?
Sure, and that'll happen more probably in the nickel situations than in the base. The base situations, and we have from the UConn game through Central Michigan through Duke, there's been a nice run of consistency there. Not perfect, but a nice run of consistency that I've seen taking a step forward. That's because of consistency in base calls, which is improving base techniques, which is improving base communication, which is improving base fits, which is allowing them to play faster and more consistently without so many big plays or wild plays along the way. Our execution, we're usually fairly elaborate when it gets to third and medium or long, and can hit the quarterback about any way we want to with multiple coverages and different things. And so that's a little bit more vanilla than what I would like. However, that's where we are. And so I would see that part probably expanding at some point. But the core part of the defense right now is we're just starting to kind of show signs of becoming consistent with that. And so I don't see that changing much for a while.
All 4 of the players who were in here talked about the horses on Saturday.
Who was in here?
Well, Dante started out. Is that something with the horses that you did out at BYU, and I assume a few more of the players out there had been on horses before? Talk about that whole experience.
I hadn't had a chance to have the family to my house yet since I've been the head coach at UVA, and so that was the first motive, is just that I wanted to continue to form great relationships and a connection with the team. But then Holly and I really wanted them to be able to experience something that maybe they never have, and have just an amazing college experience. And we just so happened to have horses, and so we thought, well, man, let's saddle them up. And I had no idea. So the practice ended, and I told the players, give me at least a half hour to get home and try to get ready. and I was still saddling in my practice gear, and I never made it to the house. I was taking, so it was 4.5 hours of players in line standing out in the rain in the middle of our pasture, taking them 4 at a time. Myself and three at a time. There's one horse they're not ready for called Hot Rod, and I kept him. Because injuries during bye week would have not been very smart. So Hot Rod was in the corral, and they kept a wide kind of path around him. But the other 3 that they were able to ride, I had no idea. I saw every emotion possible. I saw hearts beating and shaking hands and petrification. Would that be a word? Or guys just so scared. And then I saw exhilaration, and I saw more smiles. I never knew smiles could stay on that long. And selfies and Snapchats and talking to mom, and the guys just could not believe this was Charlottesville, and they had that experience. And we have a pond as well, and so at the same time, Dom Shepard and Vladimir Paul were in our boat in the canoe, and Dom's from Miami, and Glad's trying to fish and is catching the back of his head at least 3 times. It was just really, really fun. And so Dante, Smoke, man, those are just 2 that kind of come to mind. Mike Mooney dropped a rein, and his horse went just into circles, and coach, go. There was a story for almost every one. Just really, really fun to see the players in a different light, but also for them to see me in a different light. And again, I never. Coach Wintrick was on the grill, and we had a pool. None of the players swam. They were all out there lining up to get on the horses. And again, it was pouring. I mean, it was pouring rain, and they were out there. I mean, it was 4.5 hours straight up with the horses of just leading tours, and really fun. And I think a memorable experience, and they're still talking about it today.
Kind of branching off a question Jerry asked about the deep ball and things like that. Are you okay with where the balance is right now between
Sure.
pass and run? It's like 40-30, I think, but you're having a lot of success throwing the ball. Do you still like your run game? This is kind of a reflection, I guess, of Coach and I's offense. What do you think of that balance right now?
It's all driven. To me, I don't have an ideal balance. I know how many points I want. And so my job is to frame to him, we need this amount of points. We call it our pillars, and we know when we hit the pillar, we have a great chance to win, over 85% over our time at BYU and prior. And so I want him, Coach and I and the offensive staff, to put the best players in the best position to get us the points necessary, no matter how it is. In some games it might be tilted a little bit more run than pass and vice versa, but we are skilled at now is extending plays and having routes convert, and then throwing the ball over the secondary's head. And we might be better at that than just designed plays. Our scramble drill has been something we've worked on. I should have included that in the first part of the answer. But the scramble drill is something Kurt is very comfortable with, and we've worked very hard at. And so that's another part to, besides the personnelling and the formations and the type of plays, when you have the ability to then extend, that's been helpful to us also.
How difficult is Dante's job, and just assess how good he is at doing it?
We would really be in trouble if Dante wasn't playing for us this year. We don't really have another true nose currently in the program that's to the same skill as Dante is. And when you play 3-4 defense, the nose is where it all starts. And the ball is not being run in either A-gap and hasn't been all year. And he's done a really nice job with that. Plus, he's a fierce and violent competitor and player, and he has this presence of leadership that adds an edge. Most great defenses have an edge, and he helps provide that, which I really like. And he does a nice job of setting the tone for that group. But I'm not sure there is a more valuable player on the team, and not many will notice him doing his job, but for just our chance to continue to build momentum and have the season that we'd like, his play is essential to that.
You mentioned a lot of guys riding horses. Maybe this gives me a creative way to ask this question. You didn't mention Andrew Brown, so can you? Did he ride any horses? Or
I did not see Andrew Brown. Eric Smith was another highlight, though, and he called himself a natural. I didn't call him a natural, but he labeled himself a natural when he was out there. Jack Powers would have been I think a team hit as well, as he broke the speed record, at least of any player that was riding. I'm not sure it was intentional, but that's happened.
So we'll wait for Andrew's status for Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got to try. I'm ready. You know, no matter how they come at that one, I'm ready.
Quinn hasn't practiced as much, I guess, as you would have liked.
Yeah.
Given that, how pleased have you been with his performance and how he's been able to handle that as a veteran player?
It's been really difficult for not only Quinn but us. So from fall camp on, Quinn has practiced 1 day a week. That's on Thursdays. His injury has been more significant, longer lasting than any of us had hoped or expected. He has not played yet to full speed nor full potential, and I think the bye week, if it will benefit any player, Quinn is probably the one that will have benefited most from that in a little bit of additional time. And we monitored his volume a little bit more than the other players, and it would be nice to have him. But even with that, and he's one of the best tacklers that I've ever coached or been with. He just doesn't miss, and he's so clear and so precise with his communication. He and Micah, the game is just slower for them because of their preparation level. And so there's a huge difference when Quinn is in and when he's not in terms of being able to coordinate what our tags and checks are. And so even if he's not 100% physically, it more than makes up for that just by having him out there to help everyone else.
Jordan Mack became something of an internet ESPN sensation because of that hit. He's listed at 205, which I'm guessing is a lot lighter than your outside linebackers typically are. How much can he reasonably grow physically over the course of his career, and what do you see as his kind of long-term potential?
I really like Jordan, and boy, he's really, when Malcolm Cook became unable to play, that was a huge blow, and we were considering all different kinds of options, even schematically, to find our best 11 players to put them on the field, and we decided to give Jordan a try first, and we saw enough through the volume he was getting to show that he was capable, even though he's just a first year, and even with his size. And so we've tweaked a few things, but I think Jordan will end up being similar to the linebackers that I've coached before. And again, all these guys, all the outside backers have gone on to play in the NFL other than one or had that opportunity, and he'll be a guy like that, meaning probably 230-ish at some point in his career, being tall and lean and fast and long, who can cover well enough and pressure well enough. So he's really, for a first-year player, he's really doing a nice job in terms of maturity and consistency. And what's fun about Jordan is he rarely makes the same mistake twice. He's very intent and conscientious. So again, the long ball he gave up against Oregon versus the Olympic sprinter, I don't think that'll ever happen again, because he's so clear now on what his assignment is, how fast it can get upside down on you, and it's just helped his urgency. And so he's growing leaps and bounds. By his fifth game, he's really playing well, again, for his level of development.
Since you mentioned it, I thought I'd ask Malcolm Cook, is there a chance he might play again here in another year or whatever, or is he done?
No, there is from what I've been passed on, and I think this is fair to talk about, there's a chance that he will play again, and I would say it's probably likely that he will play again, not this season, but in the future.
Bryce Hall, the guy who's 6'3", 200 pounds, was a pretty prolific receiver in high school. When you got him here, obviously you inherited him in that recruiting class. What did you make him? Was there thought to play him offensively? How did you kind of look at him, and then how has he progressed at corner?
Coach Hagens I had just been hired, and Coach Hagens had seen Bryce at a playoff game, and he had something like 200 yards receiving, and even though the previous staff had slotted him to play in the secondary, Marcus was saying, man, based on how we look at receiver, he's certainly capable. And then we watched this film, and Coach Howell and Coach Hagans were lobbying both all the way until he came into to fall camp. And it only took 1 or 2 days, and looking at our secondary and also what Bryce was going to be able to do, that and being a defensive head coach, that he was going to play on defense. Corner play is really important, and that was the best that both corners had played at the same time thus far. To have Bryce and Quinn, this was the last game I'm talking about, not Quinn, Juan, sorry. Juan and Bryce playing at the same time, that collective performance by both those guys was a really nice step in the right direction. And so to have another first year doing that, that's really cool.
You like the way he kind of can play press a little more. Do you want to continue doing that?
Yeah.
A matchup deal?
So I love having long, physical, and fast corners. Because I'm not someone that enjoys free access. Free access means if you're off, you can just stand up and throw it, and it's 2nd and 3. And I don't like free access. But to not allow free access to the receivers, you have to have corners that are capable of pressing. And Kareem and Miles were a little bit more comfortable playing off, and are more comfortable playing off. It adds a different dimension as a play caller and for a defense when you have the chance to not have to have or allow free access. And just it's a little bit easier to control getting to 3rd down and with how much distance remaining. Anything else?
Back here, Bronco. Nicholas Conti was one of the guys we had in here earlier. Just how much of a weapon, how valuable has he been, just the way he's been able to pin teams?
He's amazing. And so we have very clear parameters or metrics on what we want from our punt team, and he exceeds expectations almost every week, and especially in the first 2 or 3 weeks as the defense is continuing to learn and grow, and plenty of work still to do there. By him making them start so far away from the opponent's goal line or our goal line, it just is it's really been helpful, because it's just allowing us more time and more plays to mature. And he is I think weapon is the right word, and a punt is not necessarily a bad thing for us. It's when you talk about the field position change and where the opponent will get it, and if you think about the play against Duke, the Jordan Mack play, that's not only because of the defense, that's because of where the ball was kicked. And we have some players that are really starting to get skilled at keeping it out of the end zone, and Kirk Gardner is one of those. But we have players diving, and we're practicing because Nick is so good at it. And so right now we're happy with field position, and it's allowing me as a play caller and as the head coach to then assume where we might go for it on 4th down, where we might not, trading that versus knowing they might have to start inside the 5. And so now that I'm seeing that consistency, it's helping me define maybe curtail some of the aggressive nature of when we go and when we don't go. Right?
One more.
It's younger.
How have you looked at kick return coverage at this point? That's one where nobody's broken one yet, but they've got some good gain on. You changed personnel there. Have you addressed that?
We continue to change personnel and tweak and work on schemes and move guys around. And we are average to this point at best. We have a lot of work to do from what we want to be, what we know we can be, and what our current thresholds of our metrics are. And so that's an area on our team that needs to take a significant step forward. And so we're working tirelessly on it. At some point it'll show, but right now it needs work.